What do you get when you combine a bird, a European dragon, and the Godzilla monster King Ghidorah? Well, if you do it wrong, you end up with this hideous thing. But when done correctly, you get the kaiju we're covering today, Gigantron, from the Netflix original film Ultraman Rising. We're going to be covering Gigantron's complete history today, including its role in the movie, behind the scenes, merchandise, and even the time it briefly left the world of animation to become a true Tokusatsu character. We'll even discuss Mecha Gigantron too. Yep, this is going to be a really entertaining episode of the Toku Professor. Well, hello students! Great to have you here for yet another in-depth kaiju bio. It's a pretty great day for it too. This video is releasing on July 10th, 2025, which just so happens to be the Ultraman series' 59th anniversary. That's right, 59 years ago today, the Birth of Ultraman special aired, which introduced the world to Ultraman for the first time. That means the hero will be 60 exactly a year from today. Pretty wild. In addition to us, today's sponsor is celebrating Ultraman Day as well. This video is brought to you by Seismic Toys, who actually provided some of the behind-the-scenes info on Gigantron we'll be looking at in just a little while, which is awesome. Just in time for Ultraman Day, Seismic is opening pre-orders for another officially licensed Ultraman monster figure in their Ultraman Vinyl Odyssey line. Any idea which kaiju it is? That's right, it's Gigantron. What perfect timing. I'm really looking forward to the release of this figure. It's 26 centimeters tall and a whopping 53 centimeters long, and is cast in a mix of solid and translucent soft vinyl with really striking colors. Just based on the pictures, I can tell it's the most detailed and accurate Gigantron figure ever made. Dope Pope, who designed the Titan Tiamat, who appears in Godzilla x Kong The New Empire, created the sculpt for this figure, which was based off of CG data, concept art, and production designs directly from the creators of Ultraman, Tsuburaya Productions. Here's what Seismic CEO Alex Rushdie had to say about this Gigantron figure. We are honored to produce a figure in the world of Ultraman Rising. It continues the premium production quality seen in last year's Shin Ultraman Gomez figure. We knew we had to do justice to this character as we were blown away by Ultraman Rising and the humanity and character that permeates the film. Gigantron is going to be releasing this fall, and pre-sales are available now. You can pre-order the figure both through the official Seismic Toys website, which is linked in the description of this video. You'll get an exclusive holographic Gigantron trading card if you order this way, or you can order through some of your favorite toy and collectible stores. Toku Professor viewers are able to use the exclusive coupon code GIGANTRON10 to get 10% off their Gigantron pre-orders and anything else in the Seismic web store. Thank you very much to Seismic Toys for sponsoring this video. And now, let's dive into Gigantron's behind-the-scenes history.
Gigantron is coming to you!
Did you know that Ultraman Rising was initially dreamed up by director Shannon Tyndall all the way back in 2001? He pitched his idea to every studio he could, but for a long time was continuously rejected, until in 2015 it was approved for production by Sony Pictures Animation, but then cancelled. Tyndall's movie finally came out in 2024, after 2.5 decades of trying. Patience is a virtue. In the beginning, the film was called Made in Japan, and wouldn't have even featured Ultraman. Instead, it would have starred a hero who was more based off of a Super Sentai Ranger named Gamma Man. The film was later changed to be named after this protagonist, and then changed once more to be called Ultraman Rising after Tyndall partnered with Netflix in the late 2010s. Netflix suggested that he pitch his movie to Tsuburaya Productions and ask permission to use their IP, which they granted to him. That's a brief synopsis of how Ultraman Rising was created, but where does Gigantron fit into all this? Well, based on this 2001 concept art, it seems that Emmy, who is a baby Gigantron, was present in the project from the beginning. She was based on the octopus character Takora from a 1973 Toho Tokusatsu show called Kure Kure Takora, and as a result, initially looked a little more octopus-like. As she is a baby Gigantron, she served as an inspiration for what the big one would look like. Gigantron is confirmed to have been designed later, though at what stage of the movie's development she was introduced to the plot is unclear. We know she was planned to be in the movie before Ultraman became the protagonist, as there is concept art of the monster in both its regular form and mechanical form, battling Gamma Man. The initial design of the kaiju after the movie went into development again with Netflix's involvement could have been this one, which was done by Keiko Murayama, who was behind most of the character design for this film. According to Shannon Tyndall, the monster was inspired by King Ghidorah. It kind of looks like a pink one-headed version of him, and European dragons, with the Maleficent dragon from Sleeping Beauty cited as an example. Tyndall was also inspired by how chicks grow into adult birds, with Emmy being the chick and Gigantron being the adult. And a nice extra touch was that Gigantron was purposefully designed to be upright and look like it could possibly be a suit with someone inside it. As a Toku Professor, this makes me happy. She kind of looks like the Ultraman Tiga Kaiju Melba too, but this may not be intentional. Tyndall contributed some concept art of Gigantron as well, shown here, and so did quite a few other artists, though I think a lot of these images were more concept art for how the scenes would look than how Gigantron itself would look. If anyone has any ideas as to why Gigantron has a duck in its mouth in this one, let me know. I am very confused. If I had to take a guess, I'd say this concept image by Soonmin In was the final design, as was this one of Mecha Gigantron, which was surfaced by Gabriel Gomez. Animation visual developer Nacho Molina designed the monster's skeleton, taking inspiration from bird skeletons, which were apparently considered creepy, and those of T-Rexes, humans, reptiles, and elephants as well, in addition to those old monster anatomy structure pictures I've shown in some of my past videos. Love the callback. This concept art of the monster's bones wasn't just done for fun, it was planned that the kaiju would be somewhat translucent like some deep sea fish in a few shots, and you would actually be able to see the skeleton. At moments when this would happen, it would be in what was called its abyss form, named after abyssal fish that live in the deep parts of the ocean. Ultimately, it seems that the abyss form was somewhat discarded or at least toned down, since it would have been barely used. Though there are still a few shots where you could see the monster's anatomy a little. Gigantron was also made to be bioluminescent, which may have been carried over from Emmy, who was designed to be able to glow as a way of communicating, since she couldn't talk. Shannon Tyndall wrote the screenplay for Ultraman Rising along with Mark Hames, so these two probably planned most of what Gigantron would do in the story. Based on this old concept art of the creature with Gamma Man, it's possible a scene where the monster attacked Comic-Con could have been planned. Or maybe this was just supposed to be a promotional image. Not sure. We also have access to some old Gamma Man Days storyboard art, which features Gamma Man getting distracted from his fight with the monster to look at people filming him, the hero getting whacked by Gigantron in the face, and a few other shots. According to Tyndall, the creature's name was, quote, a silly name that I came up with. He doesn't mention how he dreamed it up, though it's similar to the word gigantic, and I wouldn't be surprised if the name of the kaiju Gigan, or even the movie Tron, served as inspiration as well. The monster's roar sounds like this. But in one of the trailers, it used a megalon-like roar instead. I wonder if that was planned to be its cry or if it was just temporary. And that's everything there is to know about the behind-the-scenes creation of Gigantron, is what I would have said, but believe it or not, thanks to Seismic Toys, I was actually able to contact the director of Ultraman Rising, Shannon Tyndall himself, and ask him several questions about the kaiju. So exciting. However, I wasn't quite able to fit his responses into this video in time to meet the Ultraman Day deadline, so I'll instead be releasing a video with all that info in it sometime in the next week or two. So stay tuned for that and consider subscribing. In the meantime though, let's move on to Gigantron's in-universe history. The monster was first introduced to audiences when Dr. Onda, whose family was later revealed to have been killed by an unknown kaiju, possibly Gigantron, called the Sato family with an urgent message, namely that Gigantron was headed in their direction. Sure enough, moments later, a helicopter on fire came plummeting out of the sky right near their window, and Professor Sato dashed out and transformed into Ultraman to try and prevent the creature from damaging anything else. After briefly looking at his son and wife inside the building, the Ultra Hero turned around and looked out into the fog, from which his monstrous opponent began to emerge. But the movie didn't intend on showing us this battle, at least not yet. A little later we were shown a small snippet of it. So it cut to black before the kaiju could show its face, and then the film jumped 20 years ahead. About 12 minutes further into the movie, the monster was again teased without being fully shown, following 3 Kaiju Defense Force aircraft that were carrying a mysterious large metal ball. Gigantron trailed them at a distance, staying mostly undercover in the ocean below, though it did lift its tail out of the water and create a huge splash, destroying a buoy in the process. Any guesses where the 3 KDF aircraft ended up leading Gigantron? Yep, that's right, Tokyo, where Professor Sato's son, Kenji Sato, was in the middle of an opening day ballgame against the Swallows in the new Tokyo Dome. The professor learned of Gigantron's arrival thanks to the Kaiju alert with the Bimular logo we talked about in my History of Bimular video. He saw the Kaiju on his radar device and then looked out the window, and his eyes confirmed what the radar had told him. However, our eyes still weren't allowed to see the monster, but don't worry, that's about to change. Apparently, the pilots of the aircraft were somehow completely unaware that they had been tailed by Gigantron, and were caught utterly off guard when the monster attacked. It ended up destroying all three, just as Kenji was about to step on home plate after hitting a grand slam. Luckily, the new Tokyo Dome had some kind of defense shield that protected everyone in the stadium from the destroyed gunships, but by no means were they safe. There was a kaiju in the area, and in this awesome shot, the audience was finally introduced to it. Gigantron emerged from a fiery cloud and let out a huge angry roar as it spread out its wings. It then made a little roar before heading over to the wreckage of the aircraft to search for the metal ball, which it found before too long, and picked up in its huge hands before giving it a hug. Either this kaiju really loves soccer, or there's something inside that sphere that is really precious to it. Ken Sato, meanwhile, exited the stadium and ran in the direction of the monster before transforming into Ultraman. He inherited this ability from his dad, and immediately whacking the monster with a super strong punch, angry at the beast for interrupting his game. The monster dropped the ball in the process. This didn't leave the kaiju very pleased, and it turned to face Ultraman, spread out its wings, and roared to intimidate the hero, which worked pretty well. Then, Gigantron's body began glowing as it launched a chemiluminescent blast attack at the Ultra. Ultraman was able to block the beam with his energy shield, but as the kaiju kept it up, he ended up getting pushed up against the new Tokyo Dome as the monster slowly inched closer. Perhaps it could have done some real damage if it continued the attack, but it suddenly remembered about the metal ball and leapt over to it, picked it up, and flew away, leaving the exhausted Ultraman behind. Meanwhile, the KDF had been ordered to move out and fix their blunder, and this time they became the pursuers and Gigantron was the pursued. Knowing Gigantron wasn't evil and worried the KDF would kill it, Ultraman flew up into the air to try and get the situation sorted out in a peaceful way. Up above, the KDF began firing at Gigantron and ended up hitting it twice in the arm before it ascended to a higher altitude and then dove down, trying unsuccessfully to shake the jets off. Ultraman tried to convince the KDF to turn around, pointing out that Gigantron was leaving, but they chose to pay him no heed and were even told by Dr. Onda that they were allowed to attack Ultraman too if he got in their way. Ultraman then tried to negotiate with Gigantron instead.
The negotiations were short.
But the monster didn't seem to understand, and it began ignoring Ultraman once the KDF began firing at it again. It dropped the sphere for a moment, but flew down and snagged it again before dashing away and accidentally smacking Ultraman with its tail, knocking him back. Despite its evasive flying maneuvers, Gigantron remained within range of the KDF's missiles, and they almost shot it down before Ultraman came soaring back up again to continue negotiations. But then, Onda gave the order to shoot the monster out of the sky despite Ultraman being nearby, once it was confirmed to him that the ball would survive the shot. So the jets launched their missiles. Ultraman, noticing this with only a few seconds to act, flew up close to Gigantron, turned toward the missiles, and put his energy shield up to try and protect the beast at the last second. But his little shield didn't provide much protection, and both he and the monster were sent plummeting downward. When Ultraman came to, he was floating on the surface of the ocean. He stood up and quickly noticed Gigantron right beside him, but the monster sounded weak. Struggling, it approached the metal ball and gave it an affectionate little head snuggle. As the monster entered what looked like its last moments, it tried to keep the ball close. A few seconds later, Gigantron was dead. Or at least it looked dead. More on that in a moment. Anyway, with Gigantron supposedly no longer alive, Ultraman decided to see just what that metal ball was. Or to be more specific, what was inside of it, that the monster loved so much. Well, the answer was a Gigantron egg, which ended up hatching right then and there. Out came a little Gigantron, who assumed Ultraman was its mother. This mini Gigantron would later be given the name Emmy, and I'm not going to talk too much about her here because she could easily get a whole video to herself as one of the main characters of this movie. However, I will briefly cover anything she did in the film that gives us more information about the Gigantron species as a whole. So let's do that now. After Ultraman took the baby monster to his underwater base of operations, she was shown to be able to change colors, such as to match Ultraman's blinking color timer, fire a sonic blast of some sort, echolocate to find her way and find food she could eat, namely fish, leap incredibly high into the air even without wings, and fire a chemiluminescent blast and swim like her mom. Her intelligence was shown to be quite high, as she could dance, get enjoyment out of watching TV, or even, amazingly enough, play baseball. After a few months passed, she suddenly entered a cocoon, and by the time she came out, she had wings like the adult Gigantron. And this is the perfect segue back into the history of the first Gigantron, because right after she came out of the cocoon, the original Gigantron reappeared. How is this possible, you ask? Well, let's rewind for a second. After Ultraman took Emmy to his base, the KDF had found Gigantron's body and began to do some sus stuff with it. They brought it back to their base and through something called Project Surrogate, were able to get its heart beating again? Well, either that or it was never quite dead in the first place. Then, right after Emmy came out of her cocoon, Gigantron's roar was heard and the creature's silhouette was spotted in front of the sun. Emmy, interested in learning there was another of her kind, flew off to go find the monster, despite Ken's warnings. It was, in fact, Gigantron still, but the KDF had covered it in a metal armor and had it under their control, so it was actually Mecha Gigantron. The KDF wanted Emmy to lead their monster to the elusive Kaiju Island so they could wipe out all the monsters. And since Emmy didn't know the monster was under their control, the plan seemed to them like it was going to work. But unbeknownst to the KDF, Ultraman was still alive, and he wasn't going to let them get away with their scheme. He was able to convince Emmy Mecha Gigantron wasn't a friend, so Dr. Onda ordered the mechanical monster to attack Ultraman. The two sides ran at each other, and Ultraman escaped getting ripped to shreds by the monster's claws, and then countered by whacking the beast in the head. Mecha Gigantron quickly charged again, though, and smacked the Ultra with its tail, launching him really far, and then tried to blast him with a Mecha-luminescent blast, which Ultraman avoided by ducking beneath the waves. He then burst out of the water like a dolphin and climbed up the monster's neck, trying to attack the head again, but he was thrown off. Then Mecha Gigantron fired off a bunch of missiles from a compartment on its chest, which Ultraman was able to dodge by leaping backwards through the air and putting up his force shield. But Emmy, on the other hand, had no way to block the attack and was knocked into the water. Mecha Gigantron just sat watching while the desperate Ultraman tried to get Emmy to wake up, fearful she hadn't survived. I think the real Gigantron beneath was feeling some pity. The Ultra, now furious, placed Emmy down on a rock and ran over and started taking out all of his anger on the mechanical beast, and even ripped off part of the metal armor. Just before he could use his Ultra Slash on the monster, he noticed the pink of Gigantron underneath the armor, and suddenly realized how this mecha beast had been made. Emmy, meanwhile, who had somehow become conscious again, flew over to the mecha monster and started chirping at it, possibly aware of what Ultraman had noticed. The mechanical beast briefly didn't seem to be under Dr. Onda's control anymore as it looked at Emmy, but the KDF quickly retook control and Mecha Gigantron grabbed Ultraman's neck and held him up, as his color timer started beeping like crazy. Eventually, the timer ran out, which meant in this universe that the Ultra reverted to Ken Sato. He plummeted into the ocean, but was suddenly rescued by his dad in his Ultra Dad form. Dr. Onda tried to have his mech take out both Ultras, but once more Gigantron seemed to be regaining its own mind, and didn't listen to the KDF's orders, and Emmy's little squeaks seemed to be hurrying this process along. The monster started trying to pry the mechanical armor off, and once she was able to see the world through her own eye, the de-brainwashing was complete. Gigantron was just Gigantron again. It even gave Emmy a hug, but Dr. Onda had another mechanical monster up his sleeve, namely the Destoroyah. Oh wait, this movie is in English. So, the Destroyer. Just Ultraman and Ultradad fought the Destroyer at first, but later Gigantron launched its beam at the mech, which Dr. Onda blocked with the Destroyer's shield. He launched missiles at the whole crew, but the Ultra's energy shields protected them, and then all four began attacking the Destroyer at the same time, so Onda spun the mech to repulse them. Later, Gigantron took hold of the Destroyer and tried to fire its beam directly down onto it, but the creature was knocked away. Soon after, though, it grabbed one of the robot's arms, and Emmy was able to whack that arm right off with what I think was a light pole she'd grabbed. Gigantron later joined in when the Ultras and Emmy began firing their finishers at Destroyer to finally defeat it. After the fight, Emmy gave Gigantron another hug. The monster was also present during the self-destructing mech sequence, but didn't really contribute much. Then, just before the credits began rolling, Gigantron was seen swimming alongside a boat with Ken, his dad, and Emmy on it as they all made their way toward Kaiju Island, where, until a sequel comes out, if one ever does, I guess we can assume the monster went to live peacefully with its baby. Wow, a happy ending for a monster. We don't get many of those on this channel. So far, no sequel to Ultraman Rising has been announced to be in the works, but if one should ever come, my guess would be it would probably feature Gigantron. I also wonder if the live-action Ultra series would ever consider including the monster. An actual kaiju suit of the monster does in fact exist after all. It came out on stage during Tsuburaya Convention 2023. My guess is they probably didn't craft it to be TV quality, but its existence proves the kaiju could work in live action. As far as minor appearances for the kaiju, it was featured in an Ultraman Rising collaboration event for a Taiwanese RPG game called Hunter Age as an obtainable monster pet. And so far, I think that's it. It's still a relatively new kaiju though, so only time will tell if Tsuburaya Productions will do anything else with it in the future. Now let's move on to the merchandise portion of the video and discuss all the Gigantron products that exist. There is of course Seismic Toys' new figure, which we discussed earlier in the video, which, when it releases in a few months, I believe will be the largest figure of the monster available. On the smaller end is the Ultra Monster series figure of Gigantron, as well as a figure from the same line of Mecha Gigantron. Bandai kind of had to shrink the proportions of these guys to make them fit the line. I believe both of these toys were simultaneously also released for Western consumers as part of a line called the Soft V Kaiju series. There's this figure of Gigantron too, which was also released in both Japan and the USA. In Japan as part of the Ultra Action Figure line, and in the US as part of a line called Ultraman Action Figure. If you're lucky, you can also pull a mini Gigantron figure like this one from one of these mini Ultraman Collection blind boxes. Last but not least, Premium Bandai actually put out an SH Figuarts figure of Mecha Gigantron, which looks really nice. Kinda neat that basically all of these Gigantron figures are different sizes. And I think we're done. Hope you enjoyed the complete history of Gigantron. If you did, do me a favor and like the video and subscribe and comment. Okay, he's done. All right, people, he's done. Let's get this job done right. What job?
Just making some minor modifications to the classroom. Minor league ones, you could say.
You had a lot of things to say about the game of baseball today.
Well, I guess a few, but it was mainly about Gigantron though too, right?
Yeah, her too. But anyway, so we decided why not celebrate Ultraman Day with Agiland's favorite pastime and play ball?
Sure, but surely you don't mean in the classroom, right? I mean, we have plenty of very nice, flat property out there without desks, something I've come to appreciate. And even a high school-sized football stadium, you don't need to play it in here, right?
I think this stack of standardized tests is just foul enough to be the foul pole.
Okay. No, kids. No baseball in the classroom.
Why not, Professor? I told them they could if they just made a few adjustments in here.
You told them they could, Wise? But they'll break the window or something.
Good work, kids. Now just put that over there. Yes, perfect.
Huh?
What?
Ow! So fast! What? My desk is just... How did they do that?
Good skill. Now quick.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, to sing Agiland's national anthem here on this holiday of Ultraman Day, here is world-renowned singer Sanpodal.
Why are you crying?
My heart can't contain the patriotism.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. Happy late 4th of July to all of my American students. I sure wish the Agiland national anthem could compete with the American one, but, is it almost over?
Wow, what a performance.
Since that's over now, can you please explain how my classroom is a stadium now?
Shh, not now. Let's see if Kishimu-kun can get a leadoff hit.
Guess we're just supposed to be left confused, students. Hopefully my class wasn't confusing, though. I want to once again thank Seismic Toys for sponsoring this video. I hope you'll all check out what they have for sale. And that does it for me. This has been the Toku Professor, signing off.